we spend too much time
Yeah,
with
we-
you, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Whoa.
Your Honor is aware.
Whoa.
I apologize for
Amanda
that.
coming down with the judge next year, no.
So, is the defense ready to call a witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Dr. Lopez to the stand.
You may.
Good morning, Dr. Lopez. Could you please state your name for the members of the jury?
Good morning. My name is Dr. Eva Lopez.
So, what do you do for a living?
I currently run my own private consulting firm called Forensic Pathologist Incorporated.
And what sort of education do you have?
So I received my bachelor's in biomedical and health sciences from the Purdue University. I later went on to the Emory School of Medicine to receive my medical doctorate.
Why are you here in court today?
I was called to give my testimony to the comparative analysis I did of Dr. Quincy's autopsy.
Were you given sufficient materials to come to your conclusions today?
I was given the report that Dr. Quincy wrote up, as well as several pictures of Calkins Campground, and a hiking staff, and a handout on osteogenesis imperfecta.
Did these materials provide you with sufficient facts and data to draw your conclusions?
Yes, they were more than sufficient for me to come to my conclusions in today's case.
Did you use a particular method when coming to your conclusions for today's case?
I did, particularly in this case because we didn't have access to the body. I used the comparative autopsy analysis method, or more commonly known as CAA.
Is this widely accepted in the field?
Yes, it's the gold standard, especially in cases when we don't have the body.
Tell us a little bit about this method, Doctor.
So we use it to look at the autopsy report that's originally written, and we look for any omissions or anything that may have been overlooked in the first autopsy, and we compare that with medical records, and then I draw my own conclusions based on anything that I thought was missed in there.
You mentioned Parker Page's medical records. Could you tell us a bit about those?
Yes, so Parker had been diagnosed with asthma as well as osteogenesis imperfecta.
Do you have experience? Do you have familiarity with this osteogenesis imperfecta?
Yes, for today's case I was given a handout on OI, which helped me further understand the disease.
So, what is this disease, Doctor?
So there's 15 different varieties of osteogenesis imperfecta. A lot of them are more for historical reasons now, but the most common are type 1 through type 4, and they vary in severity.
And how would a more severe form of OI affect a person?
So a more severe form of OI, such as type 2 or type 3, has a lot of contact with lung issues and respiratory issues, which means someone is more likely to suffer from an accidental fall or get overworked very easily compared to that of someone that may have a lesser version of OI.
And what did Dr. Quincy note in the report that Parker Page's level of OI was?
Dr. Quincy had noted, as well as her medical records had noted, that she had type 1.
Do you agree with this?
Based on looking at the report that Dr. Quincy and the medical records of Parker, she was lower in stature as well as in weight, and I believe that it was a little bit more of a severe form,
Objection, Your
possibly
Honor.
type 2 or 3.
Improper opinion, if I may.
You may.
Dr. Lopez is not a specialist in osteogenesis imperfecta, nor has she ever treated Parker Page, nor did she ever examine Parker Page's body. And she is here not only discussing Parker Page's disease, which is within her expertise, but she is re-diagnosing something that Parker Page was diagnosed with by a physician during her life and was confirmed by another doctor who did examine her body. And she, based on only secondhand knowledge, is re-diagnosing her with a more severe type of OI, which she's not qualified to do.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. As for the first part of that objection, this witness has done research on osteogenesis imperfecta and has education in this area of the field. And as for the second objection, I believe that goes more towards weight, not admissibility. If the jury would rather believe or not that this re-diagnosis of Parker Page's disease is inaccurate, then that is up to them, but it should still be admissible in court.
May I respond, Your
You
Honor?
may.
First of all, her qualifications are that she read a handout on osteogenesis imperfecta that simply describes the disease. It does not give any further guidance towards doctors. It is simply something for the public to understand what the disease is definitionally. That's the extent of Dr. Lopez's knowledge on this disease, and she has given no other professional experience with dealing with the disease, dealing with people who have been diagnosed with the disease, or performing autopsies on people with the disease. Furthermore, this does not go towards weight, it goes towards admissibility. For an expert to take the stand and say that there is an alternative theory to how the victim died in this case, and it's because she had a disease that is indisputed by all of her treating physicians she did not have, is an inadmissible conclusion this doctor is stating on the stand today.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned before was that she has some level of professional experience with osteogenesis imperfecta, is that right?
I didn't say with osteogenesis imperfecta, but simply that she is a doctor in the field and has extensive training in the field of biomedical sciences.
May I respond on that, Your Honor?
Sure.
Your Honor, opposing counsel is asking us to take this doctor's opinion over another doctor's opinion who actually did treat her and another doctor who did perform the autopsy and simply take her word for it with no professional experience with the disease and no reason to take her word over any other doctors that Parker Page had a more severe type of this disease and to just take it because it's her word. This is inadmissible conclusion and should not be allowed in court today under Rule 702.
I don't know, I think this is a close call, but I'm gonna lean towards a weight issue, because, I mean, she is a doctor, she might be a doctor who doesn't know much about it, but you can handle that on cross, and it
Yes,
sounds
sir.
like you know how. So, overruled, and you can continue.
Parker Page had a more severe form. How would this affect her?
So if Parker Page had a more severe form, it would mean that her lungs could become overworked a little bit more than that of someone that had type 1, meaning that she may suffer from more severe respiratory issues, which could lead to an accidental fall, or some form of dizziness that would make her have less motor skills.
Now, let's move on to Dr. Quincy's cause of death. What did Dr. Quincy conclude that Parker Page died of?
Dr. Quincy had, in their conclusion, had linked everything very closely to this left clavicle bruise and fracture, which I don't denote that that's not important. However, I don't think this is the only thing that can cause the reason for Parker Page's death.
What else could have caused it?
So based on the bruise, Dr. Quincy had linked very much to the color of the bruise. However, the shape and location can also play a very important role when it comes to determining a cause for a bruise. Because this was on a bony premise and Parker is 12, it's more likely that she may have accidentally bumped something, and given the fact that she had OI, she is more likely to bruise, and it could have been just simply from an accident and not from anything intentional.
Now, let's move on to the time of death. What did Dr. Quincy conclude about that Parker Page's time of death was?
So Dr. Quincy had concluded that Parker had died between 4 and 6 p.m. However, I think Dr. Quincy may have left out a couple of variables that would have changed this time.
What are these variables, doctor?
Taking into account Parker's OI diagnosis, the heat of the day, as well as her shorter stature and weight, these are all variables that I don't believe Dr. Quincy accounted for.
How would the heat of the day have affected Parker's time of death?
So when you're specifically looking at the rigor mortis process, it's very well affected by temperature, meaning that after the heat of the day is increased over 30 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, that rate of rigor mortis is going to double, which means that it happens and processes in the body a lot faster, meaning that someone can look like they're dead a lot longer than they actually are.
So what would you rate Parker Page's time of death to be?
Taking these variables into account, I can't outrule that Parker may have died between 7 and 9 p.m. instead of that 4 and 6 conclusion.
What is your overall conclusion in today's case?
So based on all of the facts that I looked at, I can't totally outrule that Parker may not have suffered from a more severe form of OI, which would account into a more accidental fall on the trail that day, as well as the possibility that she died a little bit later between 7 and 9 instead of 4 and 6.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Lopez, you were hired to dispute Dr. Quincy's conclusions about Parker Page's cause, manner, and time of death, right?
I was called to look through Quincy's report to see if there's anything that was left out. not necessarily to call it into question, but see if there's, just do a second run through of it, yes.
Well, I'd like to talk about your conclusions to do this. You are not the chief medical examiner of Breckenridge County, are you?
No, I'm not.
But you used to be.
I did.
But you got fired from that job, didn't you?
I did.
And this is because someone under your supervision mishandled an autopsy, right?
I did.
Objection, Your Honor, as to relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, this goes towards the witness's qualifications to offer her expert opinions as well as her truthfulness or untruthfulness on the stand. If I may proffer, Your Honor, this line of questioning goes towards an instance where someone under her supervision mishandled an autopsy, which is what she's testifying here today about, as well as the fact that she lied about it.
Okay.
May be heard, Your Honor.
Sure.
Simply because this witness knew about somebody mishandling an autopsy does not mean that she has mishandled her testimony here in court today.
So I agree with you on that point, but if there's some lying involved, or potential lying involved, I mean, at least let them ask questions about it. If nothing about credibility or truthfulness comes out, feel free to rephrase it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Dr. Lopez, someone under your supervision mishandled an autopsy, right?
And I did speak to that person, but yes, someone had.
Right, and just to be clear, Dr. Lopez, you're here testifying about an autopsy?
To do a comparative analysis of somebody else's, yes. I
Right.
would
And
be.
when asked about whether or not that autopsy was mishandled, you lied, didn't you?
I didn't mention the fact that I knew about a mishandling, so I guess yes, I did.
Dr. Lopez, you were not Parker Page's treating physician, were you?
No, I'm not.
You never got to interview Jordan Ryder.
No, I didn't.
And the reason you didn't get to interview Jordan Ryder is because the defense counsel didn't let you.
Which is standard in most of these cases when it comes to handling the defense and prosecution. Not always do I get to talk to the defendant.
You never conducted any interviews, did you?
No, I did not.
And you never even got to examine Parker Page's body.
You know, once an autopsy is performed, you can't really do another autopsy. It's standard that someone reviews it and someone does the actual autopsy. But yes, I did not get to review
Right, so
it.
to draw your conclusions, though, you never got to examine her body.
No, I did not.
Dr. Lopez, despite all this, you drew your own conclusions about Parker Page's time, manner, and cause of death, didn't you?
I did.
Well, I'd like to talk with you about that. And you believe that Parker Page could have suffered from respiratory issues, and that's why she fell off the cliff, right?
Correct.
And you stated on direct examination that you believe that she could have had a more severe type of osteogenesis imperfecta.
Correct.
You don't actually believe that, though, do you, doctor?
It is a possibility. It was something I couldn't necessarily say was 100%, but I couldn't say that it wasn't possible either.
Well, not only was it not 100%, doctor, you actually agree with Dr. Quincy and all of Parker Page's treating physicians that it's most likely she had type 1 OI.
Yes, but it was a factor I couldn't necessarily 100% rule out.
Well, Dr. Lopez, but despite everything you just said on direct examination, you believe that the most likely circumstance is that Parker Page had the most mild type of this disease, don't you?
It's possible, yes.
And even including that, though, your alternative explanation to Parker Page being pushed off the cliff is that she suffered respiratory issues and then chose to walk to the edge of the cliff where she then fell off?
My analysis is that she had decreased motor skills, which means she would have been dizzy, not necessarily that she walked herself off the cliff intentionally, but by accident.
So that she suffered respiratory issues and then managed to walk all the way over to the edge of the cliff where she then collapsed and fell off. That's your alternative theory, Dr. Lopez.
Yes, because we don't know why Parker Page was there, but that is an alternative theory as to how she died, yes.
All right, now I'd like to talk with you about Dr. Quincy's conclusions. You stated on direct examination that you don't think Dr. Quincy took into account the temperature of the day, right?
Correct.
But you agree that Dr. Quincy actually did take in environmental factors into consideration, right?
They did, but maybe not enough, is what I believe.
Well, no, Dr. Lopez, you agree that Dr. Quincy's analysis of Parker Page's body was correct, right?
Yes,
And that her methods were correct?
correct,
And that includes her analysis of the environment at Hawkins Campground that day,
correct.
and that would include temperature.
Mhm.
So you actually don't believe that her temperature analysis was incorrect, do you?
There was other factors that determined that change in time of death, but necessarily that temperature wasn't the only one.
So just to be clear, doctor, you agree that Dr. Quincy did take temperature into account correctly?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Now, Dr. Lopez, I want to talk with you about that bruise on Parker's left clavicle. You dispute Dr. Quincy's conclusion that it could have been caused by the hiking staff, right?
Yes.
You recognize that hiking staff if I showed it to you today? All right. I'm approaching, permission to approach the witness with what has previously been entered as Exhibit 17.
You may.
Dr. Lopez, this is the hiking staff that Parker Page had on July 14th, 2018, right?
To my knowledge, yes.
And it hasn't been changed or altered in any way since the last time you saw it?
Nope.
I know. Dr. Lopez, someone without OI, such as you or myself, when we bruise, it doesn't leave an imprint, does it?
Not always, it depends on the amount of force used.
Right, but someone with the disease, like Parker Page, when they bruise, it does leave an imprint, right?
It can, yes.
Right, now if you look at the end of that hiking staff, that's 2.25 centimeters, isn't it?
Mhm.
And Parker Page's bruise on her collarbone was 2.25 centimeters, right? And just to be clear for the jury, that is the exact same size down to the 100th of a centimeter.
To my knowledge, yes.
And the end of that hiking staff, that's a perfect circle.
For the most part, yes.
And Parker Page's bruise on her collarbone, that was a perfect half circle.
Correct.
The only impeding factor being the actual collarbone, which wouldn't bruise.
Correct.
Just to be clear, Dr. Lopez, that hiking staff there that matches Parker Page's bruise, that was found in the defendant's tent the next day, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I believe it was noted, but yes, I guess.
So yes, it was found in the defendant, Jordan Ryder's tent the day after Parker died?
To my knowledge.
All right, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor. I'm approaching my previous.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor, I just asked this witness to be allowed to step down.
Thank you, doctor. Next witness?
At this time, the defense calls Cameron Lee to the stand. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to start out and give the members of the jury an opportunity to understand why you're here today. First, could you introduce yourself for the members of the jury?
My name is Cameron David Lee. It's a pleasure to meet you.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Lee?
I'm a bail bondsman. I know what you're thinking. Dog, the bounty hunter. No, I sit in front of a computer screen for about 11 to 12 hours a day. And the only thing that gets me through are my hobbies.
Could you tell us a little bit about those hobbies?
Besides for being a guitar player, amateur model, I also love hiking.
Where do you go hiking?
But my favorite place to go hiking is the Calkins campground. Mainly because there's not a lot of people there. Besides for Remy Michard at the beignet store, Sam Fisher down at the docks, and a couple hikers, it's usually pretty secluded. It lets me become one with nature, channel my inner barrel grills, my man versus wild, if you will.
You mentioned Sam Fisher. Could you tell us a little bit about that person?
I don't know too much about him, keeps to himself, doesn't wear shoes, that's about all I know.
I want to move on and talk a little bit about your time at the Calkins campground. When was the last time you went camping there?
Was July 14th to the 16th.
While you were there that weekend, did you run into Jordan Ryder and Parker Page?
Yes, I ran into them a handful of times. The first time, it seemed like they were having this back and forth on what to play on the radio. I think Parker Page wanted Slayer and Jordan wanted Beyonce. I mean, it was adorable, if I do may say myself.
You said you saw him a handful of times. Can you tell us how many?
Yes, I'd say about 3. The second time, I was sitting down by the musky pond having my peanut butter and banana sandwich, crossed off, cut into triangles, where I saw them head towards the Lacron Loop for the first time.
Just before we go any further, Mr. Lee, would it help if you had a copy of the Calkins campground map to help you show us where you were that day?
Oh, immensely.
Reading Exhibit 23, which in the witness is the same. And would it help if we had a blown-up copy of that map?
Yes.
Permission for the witness to step down and make use of the demonstrative?
Sure. Point of order, does any attorney and/or witness on the defense have any food allergies or restrictions that might impede their ability to consume a standard pizza?
As long as it's cheese.
We go vegetarian, but,
You know.
As long as it's.
okay.
I don't eat veggie either.
Right,
Oh,
good?
yeah,
Or-
yeah. Madeline has a gluten allergy.
Madeline does not have a gluten allergy. Joshua has a gluten allergy.
Oh.
Just
Right.
answer the question. I'm asking the questions right now. So, okay,
Wait, proceed.
as you were.
Alright, Mr. Lee, could you show us where you were having lunch that day?
Like I said, right here, right by the musky pond.
You said you saw Jordan Parker. Where were they going?
They were headed towards the Lacrone Loop right over here, which goes all the way around and back, hence the name, the Loop.
Are you yourself familiar with the Lacron Loop?
Yes, I've hiked it a few times. Unfortunately, I was never able to finish. I know, these buys and tries make you think that I could go all the way around, but elevation always gets to me about halfway.
Did you see Jordan and Parker come back from the Lacron Loop?
I was sitting on down, had my feet in the water at the musky pond, just watching the tides roll away. I saw Jordan come down a little while later. I saw someone, I thought it might be Parker Page. I assumed it was. I didn't see a lot of people on the trail that day, but I could not be sure.
Permission for the witness to retake the stand?
Oh, yeah, you
Was that the last time that you saw Jordan Ryder and Parker Page?
No, the last time that I saw them was on the news. I went to the Jamaican Islands for a little bit of a vacay, you know, Aruba, Jamaica, and when I got there, I saw their faces on the news, and I eventually got in contact with the police.
Did you go and interview with the police?
Yeah, I did, and they asked me a lot of questions that I didn't know and I didn't have answers to.
No further questions.
Examination. You may proceed.
Mr. Lee, it's true the first time you met the defendant was as he was driving into Calkins Campground, correct?
As she was, yes.
And it's true that at this time, the defendant was with her daughter Parker.
Again, Beyonce, that's correct.
And you could see them both clearly.
Yes.
Now, it's true that the car they were in was pretty loud, wasn't it?
Yeah, didn't think they moaned a muffler.
And so it's true that the car didn't have a muffler on it, as you said.
I'm not sure, but it was loud. I mean, L-O-D.
Yet, even over the sound of the engine, it's true that you could hear the two arguing, correct?
That is correct.
So their argument was so intense that you could hear it over the sound of the car.
Yeah.
Now, it's true the next time you saw the defendant was at 2:30 p.m. that same day, correct?
That is correct.
And you saw the defendant heading towards the Lecro Loop Trail.
Yes,
And the defendant was with Parker at this time, wasn't she?
correct.
Now, you heard the defendant shout at Parker to hurry up, didn't you?
Yeah, like a hurry up. I noticed that she was wearing a U of, say, women's soccer jersey. Parker was. I asked her if, they were going to go back-to-back World Cup champs, just like back-to-back World War champs. But got no answer. That's a yes to your question.
So exactly, you saw Parker was wearing a U.S. women's soccer jersey, wasn't she?
Correct.
And you also noticed that Parker had a limp,
Yes.
and you saw that Parker was carrying a hiking staff, wasn't she?
Correct.
And you would recognize that hiking staff as Exhibit 17, correct?
Yes, I would.
Now it's true, you also saw a third person enter the Lecro Loop Trail that same day, correct?
Yes, I believe that was Kelly Dews.
And this was a little while after seeing the defendant and Parker?
Yeah, they just walked right by me, looked at me, nodded, went, Kelly. I was like, okay.
Now it's true, the next time you saw the defendant was 6:30 p.m., correct?
About that, yes,
And you saw the defendant leaving the Lecro Loop Trail, isn't that right?
that is correct.
Well, more specifically, you saw the bridge connecting Lecro Loop Trail to the campsites.
Yes.
And at this time, the defendant was not with Parker.
He was not with Parker. I did see somebody come a little bit later. Again, I can't be sure, but at that point, no.
Well, I would like to talk about that second person, but first, when you saw the defendant, you saw that she was carrying a hiking staff, didn't you?
I believe so, yeah.
And that would be the exact same hiking staff that Parker was carrying earlier that day.
It was pretty wooded, but I'd say it'd be next to impossible for it not to be.
So that's a yes to my question.
Yes.
Now, for the second person you saw, it's true that you did not physically see this person, did you?
There was a lot of trees. I did hear the gravel crunching, but no, I did not see the person.
So you did not see a U.S. women's soccer jersey.
No.
You did not notice if this person had a limp.
No, the closest thing to it was the gravel sounded like something was being dragged with it, but I can't be sure.
Well, in fact, you cannot even tell the jury whether it was a man or a woman, can you?
No, I cannot.
And just to clarify, you saw 3 people enter the Lake Road Loop Trail that day, correct?
That is correct.
And you only saw 2 people leave.
Yes, that is correct.
And finally, Mr. Lee, just to clarify for the jury, the last time you saw the defendant, Miss Jordan Ryder, she was carrying Parker Page's hiking staff, wasn't she?
Yes, and that's exactly why I assumed the person behind was Parker Page, her daughter.
But that's a yes to my question.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor, I just asked that the witness be able to step down.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, anyone else for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Miss Jordan Ryder to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
My name is Jordan Ryder.
Have you been sitting in court all day today?
Yes, I have.
Why are you here, Miss Ryder?
My daughter Parker, she passed away last July, and I've been accused of murdering her.
Now, I have to ask, did you actually kill your own daughter?
I can't even imagine hurting Parker. She was the light of my life.
I want to start by talking a little bit about your relationship with Parker. How old were you when you had her?
I was 17. I wasn't planning on having kids, especially that young, but that's just the way that my cards fell out. And I was lucky. My parents were really helpful with raising Parker, and my boyfriend Terry at the time was an amazing father. The marriage wasn't planned, and neither was the baby, but life had its way of making it around.
Was it easy raising Parker?
The first 2 years of her life, it was heaven on earth. I stayed at home with the baby, and then Terry went off and he worked for the both of us. But when Parker was 2, Terry passed away of a brain aneurysm, and shortly after my parents both died in a car accident.
How did you manage to raise Parker by yourself?
I had this baby that was so little, and I had to take care of her, but I was a teenage mom. I didn't even have a high school diploma, so I ended up making some decisions that landed me in prison for a while so that I could make some money.
What do you mean?
Well, to support Parker, I was desperate, so I started buying and selling illegal drugs on the dark web for this guy named Sam Fisher.
Who is Sam Fisher?
Sam Fisher owns the marina here in Breckenridge County in Midlands, but the way that he actually makes his money is he runs this giant drug cartel. Almost everyone was working for him at that point, but I ran the online sales for him.
After you went to prison the first time, did you have any more contact with Sam Fisher?
When I got out in 2018, I didn't want to talk to him ever again. I wanted to move past that part of my life, and I wanted to be a better mom for Parker. I didn't want to get involved in any of that stuff again, so no, I didn't contact him. But on July 13th of 2018, he called me and he told me that he wanted me to start selling for him again. That I owed him some money from the last time I was in
Objection,
prison.
Your Honor, to hearsay?
To the statement of Sam Fisher to Jordan Ryder?
Yes.
Response.
Your Honor, this is not going for the truth of the matter asserted, but this is rather contextual, giving the subsequent action for Ms. Ryder. If I may make an offer of proof.
Please.
Ms. Ryder is then going to testify that after hearing from Sam Fisher, she decided that she had to run to the Calkins campground with Parker.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor, Therefore, they are using these statements for the truth of the matter asserted. The truth being that Sam Fisher did want the defendant to start selling these drugs.
I mean, I think there's a valid alternate use. I'm gonna overrule. Continue.
After Sam Fisher wanted you to sell drugs for him, did you go to the police?
I wanted to, but Sam has eyes all over Midlands. With Sam, it wasn't snitches end up in ditches. It was snitches end up dead in ditches. So he told me after the first time I went to prison, if I ever told anyone, he would kill Parker and then he would come back and kill me. So I knew that I had to get Parker out of there.
Where'd you go?
We went to the Calkins campground. Parker had always talked about wanting to go on this camping trip with me, and I had talked to someone about the Calkins campground recently, so I decided it would be a safe place for us to hide out so I can figure out what my next moves were going to be.
Well, let's talk about that weekend. Around what time did you arrive to the Calkins campground?
We got there at about noon to check in with the campsite owner. I rented out campsite number 12. I paid everything in cash because I didn't want Sam to be able to track my credit cards.
After you checked in, what'd you do?
Well, Parker and I set up camp, and I decided that we should do something to get our minds off of everything. I didn't tell her why we were going camping. I was terrified, but I just wanted her to have a good time with me, so we went on the Lacrone Loop.
How was your hike on the Lacrone Loop with Parker?
It was hard. We were going pretty slow, mainly because we wanted to take our time, and Parker kept looking down at her phone, messing around with our hiking staff, so it took us a while, but we ended up getting to the Lacrone Loop overlook. It was absolutely beautiful.
Before we get to the Lacrone Loop overlook, would you recognize texts sent from Parker if I were to show them to you?
Yes.
Approaching opposing counsel with Exhibit 27. Approaching the witness with the same. Would Your Honor like a courtesy copy?
Sure.
Miss Ryder, what is this that I just handed you?
These are text messages from Parker's phone.
Do they look to be a fair and accurate copy?
They do.
Have they been changed or altered in any way?
They don't look to be.
At this time, Your Honor, the defense submits Exhibit 27 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Admitted.
Miss Ryder, around what time was that last text message sent?
It says it was sent at 4:38 p.m.
And would you recognize a copy of the Lacrone Loop map if I were to show it to you?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, retrieving previously marked Exhibit 23 from evidence and approaching the witness with concern with it. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Miss Ryder, where on the map of the Calkins campground could you get service?
Well, I really didn't get a lot of good service, but Parker's phone was doing pretty fine, but only in one place that she really said she could get it. And that was near the campsites. That's where she was going on her phone the most, but the rest she was just kind of taking pictures on the trails. But I couldn't get service up there.
What kind of service could Parker get on the Lacrone Loop?
Objection, Your Honor, to lack of personal knowledge
As to the service,
as to how the defendant would know exactly where Parker's phone got service at every single location on the trail.
response.
Your Honor, I can lay that foundation.
All right, please do. Sustain.
Were you using Parker's phone at all throughout the hike?
A little bit. We used it to just check the time a couple places, and then we also were using it to take pictures because my phone wasn't really working and she had Snapchat, so we had that up, but we couldn't really get any service up there.
At any point on the Lacrone Loop when you were using Parker's phone, could you get any service?
No, we couldn't get anything while we were up there.
Well, let's talk about when you got to the overlook. You were in court today during Kelly Dew's testimony.
I was.
Could you explain that scream that Kelly Dew's heard?
Well, Parker was swinging her hiking staff around, and I knew that she had some issues with bruising and breaking her bones from what I understood of her disease, but I just really didn't want her to hurt herself. And she actually hit herself with her hiking staff at one point, so she screamed, and I took it away from her because I was upset. I didn't want her to get hurt.
Did you do anything else on the Leckrone Loop overlook?
We had a little bit of an argument while we were up there. Parker was upset with me for taking the hiking staff, and she said some pretty hurtful things. She told me she hated me and that she wished that I was just more like her uncle. But she yelled at me again some more, and I wanted to practice some of my anger management skills that I learned, so I told her that we had to just take a minute of silence. We just had to breathe, and we were quiet.
How did your hike with Parker wrap up on the Leckrone Loop?
Well, after we were quiet for a few minutes, I told her that we couldn't fight over small things like that we were a family and we had to stick together. So I told her we should head back down, and she told me that she wanted the Overlook to be our special place, somewhere that we could go back to, we could have more memories to make there. Look forward to our future together.
Around what time did you get back to your campsite?
I'm not really sure what time we got back. The sun was going down a little bit. It was getting a little bit cooler, but I don't really know the exact time.
What did you do when you got back?
Parker told me that she was still a little upset, which is completely understandable. I had been a stranger to her for a couple years, and she told me she wanted some time to think, and she wandered off, and I let her. But I kept an eye on her, and about 10 minutes later, I followed her close by.
Did you see anything when you followed her?
Well, she was walking around the pond and not on the bridge. She was heading towards the Leckrone Loop, and I heard a car pull up into campsite number 12.
Whose car was that?
It was Sam, and he didn't look happy.
So what did you do after seeing Sam Fisher?
I was terrified. There was this man who was so dangerous and capable of so many terrible things, so I told Parker to run. And when she asked me where, I told her to go to our special place.
Did you talk with Sam at all?
Yes, he started yelling at me, telling me that if I wasn't at the marina by 4 p.m. the next day, my daughter could run, but she
Objection,
couldn't
Your
hide
Honor, to
forever.
hearsay.
A statement from Sam Fisher.
Yes, Your Honor.
Response.
Your Honor, this goes to the subsequent action.